All right, the question when to enter on the creation of the fair value gap itself. For example, when we have an ST plus RE, sometimes and quite often in my trade recaps, you see me enter on the creation of a fair value gap, meaning that I do not wait for a sting into the fair value gap, I get involved before that. The thought process on why I do that is because I do not want to miss the move, and especially in a delirium trading plan especially. Flow trading plan, we could argue it's a little bit different. But delirium trading plan especially, because I know in delirium I have to wait quite a lot before I actually get a high probability opportunity. So I do not want to miss the move then on the lower time frame, if that makes sense. And I want to reward myself for the patience, for finding the high probability price action, and I do not want to miss that move. Now, of course, that also is linked with a very thin line between actually the rational thought process of I do not want to miss that move and FOMO. So we do not want to FOMO in, fear of missing out, and want to rush into the market, be greedy. That's also very important. So I have also a rule that I go by on when I enter on the creation of the fair value gap instead of waiting for a sting into it. Mainly two rules. And if we simply look at the price action, I do not necessarily want to go over time aspect. I simply want you to pay attention here to the price action, because the price action is mainly what's necessary to understand here. We have a 4-hour value gap sitting right there on ES. That 4-hour value gap is the boundary, right? That creates this target as well, which is the context target. So this right here is our overall context that we are trading in. So on the 5-minute, I would go into the 5-minute ST plus RE. So if we take a look at that, then first of all, we have an ST sitting right there. Quite high ST, but we do have that ST. Now afterwards, I see, and let me guide you through the candles right here. We see the expansion phase of a fair value gap sitting right there. Perfect, very nice. Afterwards, we have this candle. At that moment in time, I personally, right there, would execute on the creation of the fair value gap. And there's two reasons for that. The first reason being is because this candle, the third candle, is not really setting up to trade back into the fair value gap. Meaning the close of that third candle right there is below this second candle's low right there. So it's not really setting up to actually trade into it. With this first fair value gap, what we saw, and if I replay it a little bit right there, this is setting up. So can you see the third candle is setting up right there to trade back into the fair value gap. And that's also what we went over in the enrollment, right? In the advanced enrollment, where we mentioned, all right, if we close, as general rule of thumb, if we close below the low of that second expansion phase candle right there, then we are likely not trading back into the fair value gap. But if we don't close below it right there, then we can expect a retracement into that fair value gap. It's exactly why we have retraced into that first fair value gap. And this right here is where I would not enter off the fair value gap itself, but enter on the creation of the fair value gap. That's the first reason. The second reason, and the second reason is the most important one, is because in context, I can still very easily target a 1 to 2, meaning that right there, covering these highs, my 1 to 2 is sitting right there. My overall context, so my overall target on where I can look for entries and on where I would stop looking for entries as well, is this line right here. It's a small piece of the overall cake. That is perfect, because right there, and the reason why that is perfect and why I would not target further right there is because when we do enter on the creation of a fair value gap itself, instead of waiting for a sting into the fair value gap, our entry is less accurate, meaning our break even, our risk management is going to be a little bit harder. Because here, let's say this does now want to sting back into the fair value gap right there, and then leaves behind a new fair value gap sitting in this area right there, that would not allow us to go break even. Then we would have to have patience to then eventually go break even. Meaning that since we have a less accurate entry, we can't allow ourselves to go break even early, most likely. So that also means that the target should be quite easy overall, where we don't have the need to go break even early, which is done through having the context, an easy target within the easy context as well. So the 1 to 2 is easily achievable within the context right there. When I say easily achievable, I mean if you draw like this, right there, around above the 50% of the overall context. If the target is the 1 to 2 target is above the 50% right there, for bearish situations of course, and for bullish situations below the 50%, then I would argue, perfect, you can target the 1 to 2 right there, and you can create, not target the 1 to 2, you can enter on the creation of the Fvg gap itself. That is how I would approach it, and this is exactly how I approach it as well. So then eventually, of course, we have an easy delivery right there, and that's also why I want to enter on the creation of the Fvg gap itself sometimes, because the first rule is, again, that we don't have that third candle supporting the idea of actually trading back into it, meaning that the momentum is not there. The momentum is not there to make a retracement. So we want to ride the momentum essentially right there to continue lower. And if it's easily achievable within the context, of course, then we want to enter on the creation of the Fvg gap itself. It's quite simple actually. It's quite simple. Once you understand it, of course, with everything, you will get the hang of it very quickly. Where this candle, again, to show you the concept, right here, this is where we do set up to trade into this Fvg gap right there. So that would have been likely different as well. So that is exactly when I enter on the creation of the Fvg gap itself without waiting for a sting into it, which I do quite often as well. With the main rule being is if the 1 to 2 RR is easily achievable within the overall context, then I do like to do that as well. So feel free to find examples of this and feel free to do some case studies as well to get this into your mind, because this is a very valuable thing right here, because this will avoid us missing trades, and that is of course a pain in the ass to deal with when we have done the higher time frame hard work, we have waited all that time, and then we miss the entry. That's the worst thing that could happen. I would rather take a loss right there than missing the overall entry. That's such a pain in the ass. That is why I use this concept as well. All right, perfect. Thank you.